Chapter 1. Dad, my mom is getting married. Congratulations to her for the wedding. In the early morning, Bai Luo Yin woke up with an unsettling jolt and felt the back of his ears and neck warm and drenched with sweat. Since the scorching summer days were still alive and had yet to pass, every day he would open his eyes to the smoldering weather that routinely enveloped his small room. As he willed the lingering drowsiness away from his mind, he casually wiped the sweat off his skin with his hand. Within seconds, the persisting beads of sweat chose the center of his palm, leaving behind a clammy sensation that irked him. Morning had just started, and he was already burning with anger. When he finally forced himself to sit up, he lazily put on a pair of slippers. Then, he slowly dragged his feet to the sink and let his head hang below the water faucet. The ice-cold running water immediately flowed straight down along his neck, eventually enlivening his mood just a little bit. Bai Han Qi, who was sweeping the courtyard at that moment, was Bai Luo Yin's father. He was a man with a stature of 185 centimeters, and he managed all the family's internal affairs. If he could put everything in the house in a clear and orderly manner, that would be perfect. But unfortunately, nothing ever went correct. Consequently, even if he did not want to, Bai Luo Yin had always seen him as an eyesore. Once he brushed his teeth, Bai Luo Yin gurgled the water from the cup that was at the side of the drain and then spat it out. When he turned the faucet on to let the white foam drain away, he noticed that the water in the sink had increased even more. Apparently, the drain had clogged again. A minute later, Bai Luo Yin used the wooden stick to stir up a piece of rag that was inside the pool of water collected at the drainage. Surprising enough, the water soon flowed into the eye of the drainage without much hinder. Dad, you threw my underwear into the drain again. Having only swept halfway, Bai Han Chi abruptly halted when he heard those words. He dropped the broom and walked toward the two poles that were connected by a rope used to dry the clothes. 1, 2, 3. After counting a couple more times, there was still one piece of underwear missing. Needless to say, the underwear must have fallen when he was washing the clothes and traveled into the sewer along with the dirty laundry detergent. Hey, don't throw it away. It can still be worn after it's washed. Bai Luo Yin was so angry that the tip of his nose was perspiring. All right, keep it and wear it yourself. After Bai Luo Yin left, he winded around an alley and bumped into Yang Meng, who had just walked out of his house. Yang Meng's name was as different as can be to the actual person. When his father was younger, he was the most well-known pretty boy in the entire village, even more delicate than most of the young ladies. Unfortunately, the folkways of that time were not open-minded at all, which resulted in his father, as well as many others like him, falling victim to mishaps. Thus, for the sake of improving the gene of his offspring, Yang Meng's father wronged himself and married a robust woman. The moment Yang Meng was born, his father placed all his hope on his only successor and bestowed to him the character Meng, which meant fierce. Regrettably, that child took after his father since he was small. While other kids of the same age all played in the mud outside and climbed the trees, he hid in the house to sew and make paper cutlets. For those reasons alone, he had suffered many beatings. However, each time his father was done hitting him, he would always wipe his own tears for a while, before he then continued lecturing him about the rifle road with no inkling of surrendering. What happened to your hair? Yang Meng touched the top of his own head, as a trace of sadness surfaced on his pretty face. That's enough. Don't mention it. When I woke up earlier this morning, it was all gone. Did your father secretly shave your head last night? No kidding. Who else would do it besides him? Bai Luo Yin snorted and laughed. The two of us are truly linked by fate. All of a sudden, Yang Meng recalled something and slapped the back of Bai Luo Yin's neck. When you called me yesterday, you hung up halfway. What exactly did you want to tell me? Bai Luo Yin remained silent for quite a while before he faintly replied, My mom is getting married. Hearing that, Yang Meng immediately stood upright. You actually have a mother. Bai Luo Yin took a deep breath. Do you think my dad is an earthworm? Huh. The kind that stores its energy at 5th phase, mates at the 6th, and then inseminates himself to complete the process. Yang Meng laughed until his shoulders trembled. Don't tease me. I'm telling you the truth. Ever since I've known you, I've never seen your mom before. Nonsense. Last year, my mom returned home and even stayed for a whole week. Did you forget? She also frequently reversed her car from nearby your house. Oh, I remember now. That's your mom. How come she looks younger than my niece? Are you looking for trouble? I'm not. My niece was born just a few days ago, yet her head is covered with wrinkles. All newborn babies are like that. This time, Yang Meng did not utter another word. Seeing Bai Luoyin's expressionless face as he walked beside him, a layer of haze swept into his heart. Since his best friend was small, he and his father had gone through an extremely destitute lifestyle. Now that his mother wanted to remarry, one can only imagine his current state of mind. How about I find a group of people to go to their wedding and crash the venue? What do you think? You. Bai Luoyin assumed a doubtful appearance. What kind of people can you find? A group of pretty boys who perform in an opera to fight with a group of armed forces men. Armed officers. Yang Meng was flabbergasted. Your mom. Who exactly is she marrying? A major general. Yang Meng became tongue-tied. That's a high military rank. Keep talking. Talk about what? The people you wanted to find. Yang Meng's clear face was illuminated by the sun above his head. It was so clear that it was almost transparent. If I look for them, it's the same as courting death. Bai Luoyin suddenly stood still and stared at Yang Meng with determination. Hiding in his eyes was a ball of flame that was being suppressed, but soon it was going to burst out. It's okay. Just tell me what your initial thoughts were. Yang Meng held his breath. His confidence was visibly insufficient. My eldest uncle is the leader of a group of people that wail at funerals. At first, I wanted to ask him to find a group of people to go weep at the wedding ceremony, but now. That's good. Bai Luoyin suddenly interrupted Yang Meng's words. How do we contact your uncle? Don't cause us any trouble. We're just ordinary people. Don't worry. Bai Luoyin reassured him. As a devious smile overflowed the corner of his mouth. We'll definitely be able to get your uncle out of it. Chapter 2. Xiao Hai. I've already booked the banquet. What time are we leaving tomorrow? Did I say I wanted to go? A faint smile cracked on Sun Jingwei's serum-secured lips, as a gust of cool air blew along the wing of his nose and toward the tip of his brows. That kid had always been hard to deal with. Since he was young, that stubborn temperament and unwillingness to compromise had never changed. The general said that this is an order you cannot disobey. Gu Hai stood up, his tall and robust stature evincing a noble and military demeanor. Although he strolled around the room in an unruly manner, it still exuded a bold and overbearing aura. Then let him tee me up and take me there. That casually said sentence caused the outer corner of Sung Jingwei's eyes to narrow tightly, revealing 3 wrinkles. Is there a need for you to be like this? Madame passed away a long time ago, and the general is barely in his 40s. You can't just let him live alone for the rest of his life, right? Sung Jingwei's words stabbed Gu Hai's sore spot. I'll never forgive him for what happened to my mother. Hearing that, Sun Jingwei hastened to Gu Hai's side and whispered, Xiao Hai, you cannot say those words irresponsibly. If the general hears you, he will skin you alive. What happened to your mother was purely accidental. Even the forensic investigator confirmed that. How come you are still doubting your father? That's enough, stop talking. I am well aware of the situation. Sun Jingwei took a large step back and offered Gu Hai a standard military salute. Then I will come pick you up tomorrow. For the entire afternoon, Gu Hai spent his time practicing at the fencing club. When he stopped for a rest and removed his face mask, a pair of rather tough hands covered his eyes. Stop messing around. Jin Lulu dropped her hands and let her narrowed eyes scrutinize him. Gu Hai placed the palm of his hand on her cheek and patted lightly a few times, provoking her to let out a jovial laughter. Jin Lulu, Gu Hai's active girlfriend, was a girl that weighed around 40 kilograms and had a stature of 172 centimeters. Describing her as flat-chested was a bit far-fetched. A more suitable description would be her chest and back were plastered together. What was normally demanded was truly not there. If you think that her face was outstanding, then you've never been more wrong. This person had slightly tanned skin and single eyelids, paired off with a flat nose and thin flat lips. In truth, from 50 meters away, it would have been hard to make out that she was a girl. She was the loser kind of girl that made our crown prince, who was extremely outstanding in all aspects, fall for her. Moreover, once they were together, they had remained good for 3 years. How come you got tanned again? Guhei smiled faintly. It was as if all the sunlight from the window was being absorbed by his face, illuminating it tremendously. I've been swimming nonstop recently. After following Guhai into the rest area, Jin Lulu grabbed 2 pieces of tissue and wiped his sweat for him. Every time she was near Guhai, she could always make out a distinct scent of taboo and sweat mixed together. If she closed her eyes, she would have imagined him to be a handsome and mature, 30-year-old man. But when she opened her eyes, she would only see the face of a youthful man that lacked vigor. Silly girl, what are you looking at? Guhai stretched his arms out and pulled Jin Lulu into an embrace before sighing lightly. My dad is getting married, and the wedding ceremony will be held tomorrow in a low-profile fashion. That quickly? Lifting her head, Jin Lulu's bright and expressive eyes stared at Guhai. What about you? Are you going to attend your dad's wedding? Tell me, should I go or not? Of course, you should. Why wouldn't you go? You have to let her understand that not only one person calls the shots in your household. She doesn't have the rights to do whatever she wants or cause trouble. Guhai hid in a deep abyss the helplessness in his heart. I really don't want to see them. Do you know? Before my mother's accident, they were already acquainted with each other. With my dad's status, there's absolutely no way he could get married a second time. You should also understand that without me saying it. Perhaps you're overthinking everything. Guhai guzzled 2 mouthfuls of water. When his Adam's apple bobbed dead, Jin Lulu chuckled and pinched it, causing Guhai to narrowly choke. Let me ask you, if I find a group of reporters to attend tomorrow's ceremony and let them launch an unbridled coverage, will it certainly create a negative impact for them? Jin Lulu was shocked with that plan. You want to crash the wedding venue? I've wanted to get revenge on my father for a long time now. I think it won't be easy to ask the reporters. Even if they manage to collect the news, the TV station might not let them report on it, and all your efforts will be in vain. You are wrong. My purpose is not to let them report it. I just want them to bring the cameras and equipment to the venue for the sake of disrupting things. In any case, no one can even think about being happy. Oh, Jin Lulu dragged out the last syllable. I understand now. Whether the reporters are there or not isn't important. What's important is that the circumstance would definitely cause a sense of panic and disorder in the host and the people involved, right? You're very smart. A peculiar spark of light flitted into Guhai's dark obsidian eyes. Chapter 3. Yang Meng's uncle sent 4 men to buy Luo Yin. They were Ma Tu, Lalaman, Sanzazi, and Silingdang. Just by their nicknames, one could tell that they weren't a particularly bright bunch. And even if they did have any brains, what quick-witted people would do something like this? As Ma Tu stared blankly at the luxurious 5-star hotel before him, he couldn't help but to spit into his hands. Then he clasped both his hands together and rubbed until the saliva thickened, all the while wearing an extremely excited expression. Today, I will cry until I lose my voice. Sanzazi was confused. Crying cost 300 yuan. But that kid only gave each of us 200 yuan. If you cry until you lose your voice, aren't we losing out? Just take it as I gave him that 100 yuan. Lalaman crouched at the foot of a wall and looked over at Matu. Why? Who told him to have a feast at such an expensive place? Silingdang stood to the side without saying anything. As he stared at the luxurious cars pass before him, one by one, he became more and more uncertain. Lingdang, what are you doing? I just noticed that the vehicles parked here all belong to the military. This person is definitely not just anybody. No shit. You think that the person throwing a feast here has the same moral standing as us? No, that's not it. What I meant was, let's not foolishly crash this place. If we break in, we might end up squatting in prison for 3 to 5 years. Get rid of your shitty nagging. Aren't you a disgrace to us? Besides, once this job is over with, there's an additional 1,000 yuan. Don't you want that? Si Lingdang became listless as he looked at the rows of security guards and remained silent. I say someone going in. Let's also head in. Get the invitation card out and do everything according to the plan. Once we're in, don't make a fool of yourself. Wait, Si Lingdang suddenly stopped. Sanjazi's patience was wearing thin. Can you be a bit smarter? If you don't want the money, give it here. I think I saw reporters. The other three followed Sai Lingdang's line of sight. If by chance they're also trying to get in to do a live broadcast of the wedding ceremony, then the ones making the headlines in Beijing evening news today will definitely be us. I don't want this money anymore. If you guys want to do it, go for it. Si Lingdang angrily turned away with every intention to leave. Come back, Matu bellowed. Seeing that Matu was about to become enraged, Sanjazi quickly grabbed him and Si Lingdang and urged them. Stop fighting. Aren't they just reporters? Wouldn't it work out if we all go over there and capture those two? There's 4 of us and only 2 of them. Exactly. Lalaman's courage increased 100-fold. We can steal their equipment as well. That guy also looks like he's worth a lot of money. Alright, we might as well just do that. Matu also joined in. We're not going to cry anymore. We would only get 1,000 yuan after crying anyways. We can steal the things that they're carrying and sell it. It will definitely sell for more than 5,000 yuan. Afterwards, we can give the money back to the boss's nephew and tell him that we didn't want to do it since it was too risky. At the end of the day, Dagi is the smart one. Ha ha ha. As a result, the 4 sneakily approached the 2 reporters. Those 2 reporters were temporarily hired by Guhai, who had to even teach them on how to use the equipment to film on the spot. That was because anyone with a bit of brain knew better than to come here and risk it. Consequently, the 2 lingered at the front gate of the hotel without the nerve to enter, despite having the invitation card. Matu waited for the perfect opportunity and waved at the 3 behind him. Come closer. Let's pretend to be friendly with them first, then lure them to an isolated place. Then, we can attack. The 3 nodded and followed after Matu, nonchalantly. The reporter carrying the camera had just gathered up his courage to walk towards the entrance when he suddenly saw 4 thievish-looking people heading in his direction. Hey, buddy. Let's talk over there. Ah. The 2 fake reporters holed and fled towards a small road behind the hotel without consulting each other while the 4 men pursued them relentlessly. Looking at their attitudes, the fake reporters thought that they were being pursued by 4 were plainclothes policemen. They quickly abandoned the equipment, flagged down a taxi, and made their escape. What the hell is going on? Si Lingdang stared at the camera with an eyebrow raised in shock. Sanjazi gasped heavily. How would I know? Lalaman scratched his head. Were these equipment stolen goods? Who cares? Matu simply placed the equipment on his shoulder without hesitation. Let's go. We need to find a place to sell these. With these, we don't need to work this month. Holy shit. Our plan actually worked. Ha ha ha. Chapter 4. What exactly is going on? The 2 people that you hired said they were being followed by plainclothes policemen that day. They threw the equipment away at the last moment and escaped, afraid that the officers would find some information on who they were. What kind of information would they find? Tisk, they were fake reporters. Who ruled that only real reporters can carry video camera? But they had fake reporters tags on their shirt, I'm afraid. Then let me ask you, how were they able to tell that those were plainclothes policemen? Those people just abruptly chased after them, making them panic and just chase after them. Guhai asked angrily as he suddenly straightened his body on the sofa like a leopard. Did you hire a group of dim-witted people? Or plainclothes policemen? Those people were robbers and your men were cited by them. Robbers? That's impossible. Impossible. Guhai closed his eyes and took in a deep breath. Then let me ask you, what about that equipment? After those 2 ran off, where did it go? This time, the person being interrogated no longer uttered a word. Guhai calmed down and waved his hand, just leave. With that, the room sank into a moment of silence. Guhai crossed his arms and then held the bridge of his nose. He thought of what had happened at the wedding ceremony yesterday, as he sat filled with hope, only to have everything fall through in the end. In fact, now that he thought about it, he knew he was too naive. Even if those two had arrived at the venue without a hitch and managed to disrupt the ceremony, would the result change anything? The answer was that nothing would have changed. The father who he had revered since he was young would have still held another woman's hand and entered the wedding hall once more. And his mother, who was lying all alone in the depth of the cold grave, dead for the sake of her husband, still wore a smile at death's door. Gu Hai stood by the window and gazed out. Mom, I miss you. Xiao Hai, it's your aunt. Are you done with the equipment? The television station has been pressing me for them. Hurry up and send them back to me. It's gone. What? Gone? Yeah, I'll get you 2 new ones as soon as possible. As Gu Hai ended the call, his father and new stepmother returned. This was the first time that the newly organized family shared a dinner. Gu Hai ate to himself, without saying a single word, throughout the entire process. Gu Weiting glanced at Gu Hai. Why are you so quiet? There shouldn't be any talking during dinner, right? You're allowed to talk today. Reporting to the general, I have nothing to say. Ha ha ha. A sharp and clear bell like laughter suddenly resounded in the peaceful dining room, nearly causing Gu Hai to choke. Honestly, such a burst of candid laughter had never been heard in this house for the past 10 years. Gu Weiting appeared to be accustomed to such a sound, since his facial expression did not change, and nor did he jump in shock. He simply grabbed a sheet of tissue and passed it over to the woman beside him, before he spoke in a low tone. Wipe your mouth, the food is spreading out. Sorry. Zhang Yuan laughed lightly and wiped her mouth while her eyes landed on Gu Hai from time to time. Seeing that he had been ignoring her, she picked up a piece of fish with her chopsticks and put it in Gu Hai's bowl. Eat more. Gu Hai was again taken aback by this woman. He thought that Gu Weiting should have at least found someone who was comparable with his mother. But the person before him now, aside from being young and pretty, there was no other strong point about her. Her smile carried a hint of licentiousness, along with the attitude of a rural woman in her each and every movement. How did Gu Weiting fall for her? Is it possible that he had too many exotic delicacies that he suddenly wanted to try human excrement for a change? Bring your son over tomorrow and just have him live with us. As the sentence left Gu Weiting's mouth, the atmosphere in the room was brought to a deadlock again. Although Gu Hai remained quiet, judging from his expression, it wasn't hard to guess what he wanted to say. Xiao Hai, Zhang Yuan still had on a smile. My son is the same age as you, and has about the same temperament. I think that the two of you will definitely get along. If he comes, I'll leave. That sentence from Gu Hai blocked up all of Zhang Yuan's words. Gu Weiting was livid. You can just leave now. Gu Hai stood up, and that action was mimicked by Zhang Yuan, whose tone became filled with anxiety. Don't fight with your father. I never thought of letting my son come here at all. He's pretty close to his father, and won't be used to living with me. A 40-year-old divorced woman with a 17-year-old son. Gu Weiting, you really know how to accommodate yourself. For the sake of this woman, you designed a plan to entrap the wife who had accompanied you for 20 years. Regardless of whether he comes or not, I still have to leave. Gu Weiting's face darkened completely, and no matter how straight he stood, the slight trembles of his broad shoulders could still be seen. Gu Hai ignored the pair of eyes that were burning in anger behind him. He wanted to leave long ago, but had always lacked the motivation to do. Now, he could finally fulfill his wish. Chapter 5. Wake up. Don't go back to sleep. Go buy the medicines for your grandmother. Bai Luoyin rubbed his eyes drowsily and saw that the sky outside was still dark. You don't need to take a waiting number to buy the medicines. Since we have the medical prescription, you can directly queue up. Hearing that, Bai Luoyin merely groaned and turned over. Hurry up and go, so you can come back early. Your grandmother is worried. Bai Luoyin lingered for a bit before he eventually got out of the bed unwillingly. Every morning for the past 10 years, the breakfast had always been the same, which was deep-fried breadsticks and soft bean curd. Every day, Bai Hanchi would be the first one to go to the breakfast stall to buy breakfast. Sometimes, when the woman who owned that stall had yet to arrive, he would wait there until she did. Gradually, the two became acquainted with each other, and every time Bai Hanchi went to the stall, she would immediately pack the breakfast and hand it over to him. I'm already full. Bai Luoyin put his spoon down. Bai Hanchi stared at his son. You always leave a bite behind. Bai Luoyin had a bad habit. Regardless of what he ate, he always left a mouthful behind. Even if he was not full, a bit of food was always left behind. The habit had started when Bai Luoyin was still a child. When he was a wee lad, because his family did not have enough to eat, Bai Hanchi always set aside what food he could for Bai Luoyin. As a result, Bai Luoyin loved his dad dearly, yet felt sorry for him all the same. And thus, he left his dad a mouthful each time from his own portion. Even though they could eat their full now, this bad habit of his had stuck around. Today was Friday and the doctors were unavailable on the weekends. Therefore, the queue at the hospital was tremendously long. Considering that this was a top-level hospital, it was completely packed with people, as if it was a free examination day. The crowd squeezing together looked exactly like a throng of people at the Beijing subway during rush hour. Hey bro, you stepped on my foot. Impossible. Our feet aren't even touching the ground. In the queue, Bai Luoyin was standing behind a beautiful girl. The person behind unexpectedly shoved into him, causing Bai Luoyin to bump into the girl in front of him repeatedly. Bai Luoyin didn't know whether he should feel happy or annoyed. If he bumped into her one more time, he was afraid she might get pregnant. Hey, handsome. I'm talking to you. Bai Luoyin's thoughts were still on the beautiful girl in front of him, until someone behind him tapped his shoulder. He turned around for a look only to realize that two more girls had somehow appeared, both similar in looks and fashionably dressed, looking as though they wanted to cut in line. Hey, handsome. I give you two options. Either you let me stand in front of you, or give me your phone number. 136 XXXXXX. The two girls walked away, Wiley giggling happily. As if she had waited long enough, the girl in front finally summoned her courage and turned back to look at Bai Luoyin when she heard him speak. Was that really your phone number? I don't even have a cell phone. After waiting until midday, Bai Luoyin finally went home carrying a bag of medicines that cost 1,057 yuan and 3.2 mile, a month's worth of spending. Originally, his family was not that poor. The main reason was that there were two elderlies in his family. While his grandmother relied on medications to sustain her condition, his grandfather, on the other hand, needed an intravenous drip every once in a while. It was to prevent his cerebral thrombosis from recurring. Bai Hanchi had two older brothers. The eldest was a doctor who taught at a well-known university in Beijing as a professor, with a monthly income that exceeded 10,000 yuan, combined with countless other projects. However, his biggest hobby was to masquerade as a poor person. The second eldest brother was a businessman who lived extravagantly, but every time his aging parents needed to visit the doctor, the money in his pockets seemed to magically disappear. Auntie. Bai Luoyin politely greeted the neighbor in front of him. You're back already. What's there to eat at home today? I don't know. Just as he finished speaking, Bai Luoyin suddenly heard the sound of a car honking behind him. He turned around for a look only to be met with the sight of a luxurious and imposing military vehicle. Taking a second look at the owner of the vehicle, it was a young, beautiful lady. Bai Luoyin quickened his pace. Xiao Yin. In order to catch up to Bai Luoyin, Jiang Yuan had no other option but to run wildly in her long skirt lifted up a bit. Had Gu Hai been there to see that sight, he would have thought of dragging her before the public to humiliate her. What are you avoiding your mother for? Bai Luoyin remained silent. I came here because I need to talk to you. Get in the car. Bai Luoyin did not budge an inch as he upheld a cold and indifferent expression. If you don't answer me, I will enter the courtyard of your house. Bai Luoyin vaguely heard the sound of his grandmother's voice in the courtyard, and the medicines in the plastic bag he was holding were to treat her heart condition. Bai Luoyin struggled for a while before compromised. The graduation rate of the high school you're currently attending is low and the teaching environment is also subpar. I've already contacted a private high school so you can go to study there for 2 years. After the college entrance examination, I can arrange for you to study abroad. Bai Luoyin only said 4 words. I am not going. Zhang Yuan had foreseen that kind of outcome, but she refused to give up. You can hate me and even question what kind of mother I am, but you cannot wrong yourself like this. What can you achieve by studying in that worn-down high school? You are the same age as the son of my new husband. He is also attending the private high school that I have arranged for you. There are boundless prospects in the future. What differences are there between the both of you? New husband. Bai Luoyin felt sick hearing those 2 words. Don't tell me that you want to follow in your father's footsteps and be a good-for-nothing man his entire life, who's still riding a bicycle to work in his 40s. Bai Luoyin calmly swallowed his saliva and at last uttered a complete sentence. A person's conducts and accomplishments are not judged merely by the wealth an individual possesses, rather how much wealth they manage to help others with. I would like to ask you, Mrs. Jiang Yuan, you drive luxurious cars and carry designer bags, but how many people have you supported? Those words were like knives, practically stabbed Jiang Yuan's in the stomach. She stared blankly at Bai Luoyin before she started to talk with trembling lips. I know that I did not fulfill my duties as a mother properly, so now I want to make it up to you. Since you are only 17 years old and I am young still, why can't you give me another chance? I'll give you a chance. Don't come looking for me anymore. Bai Luoyin sat up, got out of the car and walked straight towards the door. Xiao. Jiang Yuan got up and cried out. Bai Luoyin clenched his fist tightly and looked back at Jiang Yuan. And next time, don't ever mention that family in front of me again. I'm sick of it. Chapter 6. What? You want to transfer to another school? Gu Hai nodded. The school that I am in now is too close to my house. Since I moved out already, it's too troublesome to attend that school. Fang Fei was confused by Gu Hai's words. What do you mean, moved out? Gu Hai leaned half his butt against the cabinet and heedlessly lit a stick of cigarette. The old man and I had an argument. Seeing that, Fang Fei took the cigarette from Gu Hai's hand. You're that addicted to smoking at such a young age. Let me tell you, smoking can affect your puberty. My puberty has ended already. Fang Fei's eyes involuntarily shifted to Gu Hai's trousers. After that, she calmly withdrew her gaze and pretended, as if nothing had happened before changing the topic. What kind of school are you looking for? This will be up to you. I knew it. Whenever you come looking for me, it's never anything good. Gu Hai laughed. I only have you as a closer relative now. Hearing those words, Fang Fei was actually quite emotionally moved. Since Gu Hai was a child, he had always been close to this aunt and would follow behind her all day long. Even after they grew up, he was still like that. No matter if it was bad or good things, he would always run to her. My husband is actually acquainted with a few school principals. Then just hurry up. Wait a minute. Fang Fei grabbed Gu Hai's hand. Let me clarify that if it's not a semi-good high school, you can't go there. The conditions aren't as good as your previous school either, but it can't be that bad either. As long as I can attend the school, then it's all good. It's all up to you. When Bai Luoyin turned on his computer and logged into his email, there were over 20 unread emails, all of which were from overseas, and the signature was from the same person, Shi Hui. He trashed everything, and then completely deleted it. Since they have broken up, then they must be done thoroughly. Xiao Yin, come here. Grandma Bai's voice sounded from the room next door. Bai Luoyin quickly got up and went to Grandma Bai's room. Grandma Bai was sitting on the sofa. Her petite and heavy-set appearance resembled a respectable small Buddha. If she did not speak, anyone who came upon her would have thought that she was a healthy elderly lady, but once she spoke, it would definitely startle you. Xiao Yin, chop an apple for Grandma to eat. Bai Luoyin was accustomed to it. He immediately picked up an apple and started to peel it with a knife. But when he had only peeled it halfway, Grandma Bai could not look on anymore and pulled the apple skin and mumbled something incoherent words before stuffing the skin into her mouth. Bai Luoyin tried to stop her. Don't eat that, grandma. Tick, tick. Bai Luoyin understood that his grandmother disliked that he had cut too deep into the apple, making the skin tick. A year ago, Bai Luoyin's grandmother was someone who was very entertaining in conversations. During family gatherings, you would only hear her voice. At that time, Grandma Bai was very stealthy. Not even 10 people could compete with her. Just this year, Grandma Bai was admitted to the hospital due to pulmonary embolism, and it scattered along the blood vessel that carried blood flow to the cerebellum, which led her to speak in an incorrect and inexplicable speech. For example, saying the word chop an apple instead of cut an apple was considered a small matter. Most of the time, she would call Grandpa Bai uncle, or call his aunt big sister. Over time, she would even address the young and small youth as someone of the same generation as her. Grandma, I'm going to my room since the computer is still on. Wait a moment, chat with Grandma. One thing was not said from the aforementioned. Don't think that just because Grandma Bai's speech was not the same as before, she could still talk enthusiastically, maybe even more than ever. Whenever she could get a hold of someone, she could go on endlessly. This caused everyone in the neighborhood to avoid her whenever they saw her. In truth, they were unable to comprehend the set of newly created languages and patterns that she utilized. Shu school has started, right? There's still a week left. Grandma Bai held Bai Luoyin's hand with an outrageously concerned expression, remarkably similar to an energetic little elderly lady. Study well and don't cause trouble, be arrogant. Bai Luoyin's tone was that of when one wanted to coax a child. Don't worry, I won't cause trouble. Be arrogant. In less than 5 minutes, Grandma Bai started to snore. Normally older people slept less, but Grandma Bai was certainly an exception. She would wake up at 8 in the morning for breakfast, go back to sleep again until 4 in the afternoon. Then after moving about in the house, have dinner, and then when 8 o'clock rolled in, she would head to bed as she routinely does. Grandpa Bai and Grandma Bai were completely opposite. He would wake up at 4 in the morning and ride his tricycle out of the yard, come back for lunch around noon, leave again in the afternoon, return to eat dinner, and then go out again for a stroll before arriving home very late that night. The only common ground this couple had was that they were both muddle-headed. This muddle-headedness can incarnate when the two watch television shows. At night, they would watch 5 shows and unexpectedly regard them all as one complete show, and then enthusiastically discuss the content for others to hear. Bai Luoying conveniently picked up a gown that was on the sofa and covered Grandma Bai with it before he walked out. Chapter 7. When midday approached, Bai Luoyin was rudely awakened by a phone call. The moment he picked up, Yang Meng's cheery and exuberant voice instantly came through the receiver. Hey bro, are you still sleeping? School started today, and you are assigned to class 27. Hurry up and come check in. I can guarantee that you will get a nice, pleasant surprise. Bai Luoyin sat up with the jittery sensation of having been suddenly awoken still bothering him. But when he thought of how fast school had started, he felt even more tired. While the other students were already sitting in class, he was still calmly putting on his clothes. On his way to the school, Bai Luoyin felt something hard pressing against his foot. When he looked down, he realized that he actually had on slipper as he left the house. Forget it, I walked this far already. I don't want to go back home again. Second year, class 27, that should be here. Bai Luoyin pushed the door open and walked in. There was a set rule that the last student to enter late to the class always attracted the highest level of attention from every student, and Bai Luoyin was no exception. Nevertheless, Bai Luoyin looked unfazed. He was already late to the class, but instead of providing an explanation, he confidently walked to the last available desk, pulled the chair out, and settled down. Throughout the process, his expression remained very calm and composed. As a result, the surrounding students hissed in displeasure at him for a good while. Bai Luoyin didn't understand the reason for these hissing sounds. Then the male student beside him answered his misgivings. You just let an exceptionally good opportunity slip away. Hearing that, Bai Luoyin only appeared uninterested. What opportunity? Have a look yourself. Bai Luoyin looked up and let his gaze stop over the teacher in charge of the class's face for a moment. This was one of the school's most notable teacher, and because she was extremely beautiful, every time the school obtained any successful achievements, she would act as the representative of the school. Meanwhile, every male yearned to be her student. If I were you, I would definitely make use of this tardiness and apologize to her. First, just worm your way into having a friendly relationship, and then work from there. If you destroy the table, she will take the initiative to come and be friends with you. The male student smiled foolishly. It's it because I don't even dare to do that. At that moment, Bai Luo Yin finally understood what Yang Meng had meant by a pleasant surprise. So as it turns out, it was due to this teacher. Frankly speaking, Bai Luo Yin was not interested in a mature, beautiful woman, especially when said woman bore a remarkable resemblance to his mother. As Bai Luo Yin arranged his things on the desk, one of his ballpoint pens fell to the ground. When he bent over to pick it up, he unintentionally saw that the male student in front of him had also worn slippers to the school. Not only that, but he had also paired it with baggy pants. How flashy. Students. Once those sexy red lips parted, the whole class fell into such utter silence that not even the sound of a needle dropping could be heard, especially the male animals, since they didn't even dare to breathe. I'm the teacher in charge of this class. My name is Luo Xiaoyu, and this is my cell phone number, the teacher said as she turned around to write on the blackboard. I've never made this public to any of my former students, so you all should be honored. With that, thunderous applause resounded through the classroom. There were only 2 students who did not bother to write down the number. One of them was Bai Luoyin. In fact, he was the most brilliant, because that number would never go through no matter what. Naturally, that was another matter which will be brought up later on. The students took turns to go up and introduce themselves. When it was finally the guy wearing the baggy pants and slippers' turn, Bai Luoyin especially paid attention to him. I'm from Tianjin and my name is Yu Qi. Bai Luoyin was still waiting for him to say his name, but the guy had already walked back with confidence and ease. A certain person with the surname of Bai stared dumbfounded for a moment before he mumbled to himself, My name is Yuki. What's wrong with your name? You haven't said it yet, but you're already returning. However, when Bai Luoyin looked up, he saw that the 2 words written on the blackboard were Yuqi. So, his name is Yuki. Bai Luoyin collapsed mentally. Fortunately, no one had heard him mumbling to himself just now. Chapter 8. These are your classmates' name cards. Follow the location and order and write the seating list accordingly. Give it to me after school when you're done. Without even lifting his eyes to look at her, Bai Luoyin silently took the name cards. Then he started to write the names on a piece of paper one by one. It took only a second for all the boys sitting around Bai Luoyin to stare at him with envious and admiring eyes. Those eyes clearly said, It's only the 2nd day of school, and the teacher has already asked him to help her. Why? Truth to be told, Bai Luoyin was already accustomed to such situations. Every time he enrolled in a new class, the teacher would always ask him to write the seating list. That was mainly due to the fact that his writing was exceptionally beautiful. Of course, his face was as beautiful as his writing. Gao Chao, Wang Jian, Wei Zelong, Gu Xin, Fang Shaoxi. Careful in the way he held his pen, Bai Luoyin wrote the names on the paper meticulously. However, when he picked up the 4th sheet of paper, he frowned at the name he was about to write down. Gu Ke. That's impossible. Gu Mu. Who would ever have a name like this? Gu Lang. That doesn't sound right. After being driven to confusion by the illegible characters for nearly a minute, Bai Luoyin finally tapped Yuki's shoulder. Hey, how do you read this character? Yuki casually took the card and held it with one hand, while touching the bridge of his nose with the other. His demeanor, as he contemplated in silence, made Yuchi look quite fetching. But as sexy as that pose was to an onlooker, a few seconds later, he sneezed, shattering the image. Making sure that no one was paying attention, he took out a tissue and blew his nose. Then, trying to maintain his appearance, he gave Bai Luoyin a look. Why does it look like a celebrity's autograph? I really hate this kind of person. Having been the one responsible for writing all the names for so many years, Bai Luoyin was very good at read all kinds of handwriting styles by now. His strength in this area was extremely formidable, so much that he could even recognize the most random characters and unsightly styles. But the thing he despised most of all was someone who feigned coolness and changed the proper font structure completely. That kind of stunt made it not only impossible for him to read the characters, but also brought on a headache to strike his brain cells. Look, his seat number is written on the card. Just go over to him and ask, stop guessing and finish it already. Honestly, that kind of person was not someone Bai Luoyin wanted to ever associate with. Bai Luoyin leisurely walked over to Gu Hai's seat. Then one by one, he grabbed the books from the desk that had Gu Hai's name written on them. However, to his dismay, the name was written in the same orthographic style in every single textbook. Meanwhile, Gu Hai continued to stare at the book in his hand. But then, someone suddenly snatched the book away from him. Bai Luoyin calmly turned his book to page 1. Although Gu Hai's name was written there, it was unfortunately written in the same unsightly style, the style that he could neither read nor begin to understand. What do you want? Gu Hai's voice sounding mildly irritated. Bai Luoyin looked at Gu Hai. I'm writing the seating list. Tell me your name. Gu Hai not hearing it. Bai Luoyin was momentarily bemused. He looked at the characters, then at the owner. If you're a human, then write like one. It wasn't hard to tell that Gu Hai was irritated. No one had ever dared to say those kinds of harsh words to his face before, except for his father. The main reason being that over the past 10 years or so, he had always gotten along with others due to his status. But now, he was just an ordinary citizen. Actually, getting insulted once in a while doesn't feel that bad. This character is high. Bai Luoyin frowned deeply at his paper. How can this word be high? It's not even fucking close. Feeling a little bit annoyed, Bai Luoyin returned to his seat and wrote the name on the paper. Chapter 9. As the teacher had requested of him, Bai Luoyin diligently copied the seating arrangements of the 57 students in the class. Then he passed them out to his classmates one by one. When Gu Hai received the paper, instead of placing it directly on his desk, he merely stared at it for a while. Ever since he was a little boy, Gu Weiting had taught Gu Hai that a person's handwriting could accurately tell that person's true character and accomplishments. Bai Luoyin's handwriting was strong and spirited, yet yesterday he spoken harshly with him. His handwriting and his character were completely different. Could it be because of my bad attitude? Noting that, Gu Hai decided to test out his theory. Once the bell rang, Gu Hai walked straight towards the seat in front of Bai Luoyin's, which happened to be Yuki's seat with his seating list, and sat down watching him quietly. As Bai Luoyin was immersed in his homework, he didn't have time to look up at the person sitting in front of him. Hence immersed in homework, he ended up ignoring Gu Hai. A minute later, Gu Hai opened his mouth to speak, revealing a deep and crisp voice. This is your handwriting. Right. Bai Luoyin's brain, thinking hard about the homework, lost its train of thought with just a word from Gu Hai. Overcome with anger, he grabbed a nearby ruler and hit Gu Hai's head. Do you have something important to say? If not, then don't bother me. Gu Hai looked at Bai Luoyin's face again. He was right. It did match his handwriting. It didn't just belong to anyone. There was certain character to it. If you solely observed his features individually, they didn't exactly come together. But if you observed them as whole, his face was rather unique. Ever after a few more minutes, Bai Luoyin was still unaware of Gu Hai's eyes boring through him. He was struggling with his homework when Gu Hai suddenly pointed to his book and said, I know how to answer this question. However, Bai Luoyin immediately grabbed at Gu Hai's hand and pushed it off his desk. Thank you, but I can do it myself. With his hand strongly pushed him away, and turning slightly red, Gu Hai's face darkened. Pick up my ruler, Bai Luoyin commanded. Gu Hai didn't move. Why are you being so difficult? Didn't I just tell you to pick up the ruler? Can't you be a bit faster? Giving a glance, Gu Hai unexpectedly complied, picked up the ruler and respectfully gave it back to Bai Luoyin. As the bell for class rang, Gu Hai went back to his own seat, clutching a piece of paper that he had torn from Bai Luoyin's homework in his hand. In truth, he felt an overflowing appreciation for Bai Luoyin's hard work. Once class came to an end, Yu Qie finished gathering his things and turned around to look at Bai Luoyin. Let's go eat. I'm not a boarder, so I'll go eat at home instead. Bai Luoyin said, nonchalantly as he went outside, but Yu Qie caught up to him. Today's my treat. Let's go to the cafeteria to eat. Hearing that, Bai Luoyin felt uneasy and said, can't you choose a better place to treat me? School cafeteria. Do you have something against me? But when he suddenly remembered Bai Han Chi's terrible cooking, he shuddered and agreed. Throughout the way, Yu Qie maintained his cool image. He wasn't fond of wearing the school uniform, so he simply wore a plaid shirt as a replacement. On top of that, he always kept the top two buttons unbuttoned, which inadvertently exposed half of his chest. Bai Luoyin had recently noticed that Yu Qie always had his headphones with him, even when he was walking on the street, and whenever someone greeted him, he would pretend that he hadn't heard them. However, whenever Bai Luoyin said a word that annoyed him, Yu Qie always lost his temper. Consequently, Bai Luoyin suspected that Yu Qie's headphone was never plugged to anything. I think that you're really cold. Bai Luoyin was taken aback, thinking that he heard Yu Qie wrong. Am I as cold as you are? I'm only pretending. Yu Qie suddenly grinned. But you are actually cold to the bones, which gives off an aura that says, don't get close to me. Don't give me those bitter words. Yu Qie didn't answer, looking around to make sure no one was nearby, and suddenly pulled out a tissue to blow his nose. Bai Luoyin looked at him. Do you have rhinitis? How do you know? Yu Qie asked with astonishment. I must be blind to not see it. Honestly, who can't? Yu Qie blew his nose no less than 5 times in each class, and always left his seat at the end. So whenever Bai Luoyin lifted his eyes, he would always be met with the sight of amount of used tissues inside Yu Qie's desk. Not wanting to think about it, because it made him nauseated, Bai Luoyin forced himself to turn his attention elsewhere, otherwise, he wouldn't have any appetite. How can you eat this much? Yu Qie questioned as he looked at the plates of food on the table. He felt like he was witnessing real life of Wusong, right in front of his very eyes. 2 meals, 8 buns, a bowl of fried shredded pancake, 3 burgers, 1 plate of cold noodle, and 1 plate of dumplings. And that was only by Yin's order. How are these even enough? I'm still hungry. At those words, Yu Qie broke into a cold sweat. He had always wanted to lose weight since he thought his legs were a bit thick and didn't look good when he wore pants. He had always been jealous of Bai Luoyin because he was neither too fat nor too thin. Bai Luoyin's body is perfectly proportioned, but as he witnessed Bai Luoyin practically inhale such a large amount of food, Yu Qie was truly raging with jealousy. Do you usually exercise? Yu Qie dared to ask, wanting to learn more about him. Bai Luoyin ate the remaining food on his plate and wiped his mouth. I don't really exercise much except for walking to school. That's just scary, so where does all the food you eat go to? Bai Luoyin pointed to his stomach. You'll have to ask him. I don't know. Walking sluggishly, Yu Qie couldn't help but be utterly upset. He didn't want to, but he regretted treating Bai Luoyin to a lunch now. His meal card had been maxed out. He can't eat at the canteen anymore after today. Friend, can I borrow your meal card? When I came to school, I forgot to bring it with me. A certain someone asked Yu Qie while wearing an innocent and miserable look. Yu Qie picked up his meal card with 2 fingers and passed it over to him. Here, just use it. You don't need to return it to me. Chapter 10. Bai Luoyin, please come out for a minute. During the self-study period, Bai Luoyin was called out by the Chinese literature teacher. I don't know what kind of opinion you have of me or of the assignment I gave to you. If you really do have an opinion, you can voice it directly. There's really no need to play jokes on me. At first, my impression of you as a student was very good, but the way you're approaching things has truly disappointed me. Hearing those harsh words, Bai Luoyin was at a loss as to why he was being scolded by the teacher. Teacher, could you please explain to me what happened? Thinking that Bai Luoyin was feigning ignorance, The teacher threw the essay book at him. Bai Luoyin opened the book only to notice that some pages were missing. Even worse, the particular page on which he had written his essay being ripped off. He carefully thought about it for a minute. He was sure he had written the essay according to the teacher's requirements. Although his composition was mediocre, it still made no sense for his work to be ripped out, let alone having to be scolded by her. Explain this to me. What do you mean by submitting an empty essay book? An empty book? Bai Luoyin said dumbly, expression one of utter shock. Even his voice tapered off. Hearing that the teacher became livid. Don't play pretend with me. I have taught for many years. There is no mischief I haven't seen. Go back and write the essay. Additionally, write a self-reflection letter on what you have done wrong. It's not like that. Bai Luoyin attempted to explain anxiously, teacher, I really did write the essay, but I don't know who ripped it out. The teacher slowly turned her head and glared at Bai Luoyin, an eerie expression dawning in her eyes, and said, Are you suggesting that I was the one who ripped off your essay? No, that's not what I meant. You're not allowed to join the next literature class. Stay out here and reflect on your behavior until you understand what you did wrong. Bai Luoyin stood there motionless as the teacher spun her head and seethed once again. Don't think that it's easy to bully me. Just who is being bullied by whom? Bai Luoyin gritted his teeth quietly. That son of a bitch. If I ever catch the asshole who tore off my homework, I'll definitely skin him alive. Along the main street outside of Chongwi, Men, Guhai, and two of his friends were eating dinner at a hot pot restaurant. Those friends could be described as his childhood friends. Having grown up in the military camp together, they had bonded closely like birds of the same feather for more than 10 years. Your father really didn't search for you in the past few days. Nope. Ouch, he's actually able to stay calm enough this time around. Gu Hai snickered loudly, fiddling with the wine glass in his hands before casually replying, How can he possibly stay calm? He couldn't handle me from the start. As far as I know, he wanted me to leave since the very beginning. It's just that he was too self-conscious to drive me away. Even so, you're his only son. It's unlikely that he'll be this ruthless towards you. Li Shuo poured another glass of wine for Gu Hai. The three of them raised their wine glasses for a toast, and then downed the entire glass in one gulp. Did you just realize that he's that ruthless? Do you remember, when I was young, he used to hang me from the roof beams and whip me. If it hadn't been for my mother, I wouldn't have lived this long. Zhou Shihu nodded his head with zeal in agreement. Since I was a boy, I've always felt nervous whenever I saw your father. Oh yeah, you mentioned earlier that someone had sabotaged your plans and stole all the equipment. Have you caught that person yet? Thinking back to that matter, Gu Hai furiously grit his teeth in anger. I found the stolen equipment at a second-hand goods market. But since the seller had used fake IDs, it was difficult to investigate and track them down. However, I am more concerned about the person who actually had the guts to steal my things. I would like to know who that person is. Li Shuo laughed and shook his head, saying, That person is in a deep trouble. Placing a roll of meat into the hot pot, Zhou Shihu turned to Gu Hai and asked her, I heard that the woman also has a son. Have you ever met him before? It would be best if I never catch sight of him. Sensing Gu Hai's sour mood, Li Shuo mockingly laughed. Aren't you afraid that one day her son will be better than you? Gu Hai snarled at Li Shuo with a cold and sharp gaze, nearly freezing the steaming hot beef slices inside Li Shuo's bowl. Joshi slapped Li Shuo's shoulder while grinning widely to lighten the atmosphere. Alright, that's enough. Stop talking about these useless things. Eat quickly. Chapter 11. Bai Luoyin. The moment Bai Luoyin heard his name, he turned his head around to see Dong Na, an upperclassman, behind him. She smiled gently like a fully blossomed flower as she made her way towards him. Her footsteps formed a figure eight as she walked back and forth in front of class 27. All the while, her presence attracted nearly every pair of eyes in the classroom. I have a question to ask you. Bai Luoyin merely gave Dong Na a quick glance, saying, Who's the handsome guy in your class, sitting 2 rows from the back? There's more than one guy sitting 2 rows from the back. How would I know which one you're talking about? Dong Na looked around more carefully. Then she covertly inched closer to Bai Luoyin's ear, whispering, It's that handsome boy who always wears a plaid shirt. He puts his headphones on whenever he's listening to music. Just so you know, all the girls in our class think he's very cool. Bai Luoyin already knew which student Dongna was talking about, but he couldn't see any of the charming traits that she had mentioned in Yukie's person. All he could think of instead was a drawer full of used tissues. Tell me, if I were to chase after him, do you think he'll accept me? Looking at my beauty, is there any hope? It was silent for a moment before Bai Luoyin mentally rolled his eyes. All he could think of was rushing home to eat as soon as possible, so he hastily replied, "Yeah, there is." "Really?" Dongna tugged Bai Luoyin's arm stubbornly. "Then, why don't you tell me what he likes? I've noticed that both of you are always hanging out together." Nearly getting to the point where annoyance was sinking into his bones, Bai Luoyin pushed off Dongna's hands. Then, he told her honestly, "You just need to send him a big pack of toilet paper. Remember, not a roll, but a big pack." After he answered her, Bai Luoyin promptly strode over to the staircase. Dongna shouted from behind, "Is it the pack with 12 rolls or 10 rolls?" Once he heard those words, Bai Luoyin nearly fell and rolled down the flight of stairs. Yang Meng eagerly chased after Bai Luoyin, then threw his arm over his shoulder and laughed cheerfully. "Today, our class organized a voting for the prettiest girl in the class. From the voting result, there are 5 female students with about the same number of votes, and they are all very good looking. I'd say the prettiest girl is the one who has a mole at the outer corner of her left eye." Unbeknownst to Yang Meng, Bai Luoyin's cold gaze has been constantly following the cracks on the red brick wall. Yang Meng pushed him with one hand. "Are you listening to what I'm saying?" "Yes, I am. You said your grandmother bought a pound of green persimmons." Yang Meng slapped his own forehead in exasperation. Those words he spoke just now had been in vain. Seeing that Bai Luoyin still had a blank look on his face, he tentatively asked, "Are you thinking about Shihui?" Hearing that name, Bai Luoyin's eyes flashed instantly. "It's not that." "Then, what is it?" After a long time, Bai Luoyin finally spoke. "I'm trying to figure out who tore out my essay paper." The house that Gu Hai rented covered an area of 120 square meters and consisted of only one bedroom and one bathroom. Much of the space was filled with sporting equipment. That was because Gu Hai had developed the habit, almost bordering on obsessive compulsive disorder, of exercising daily, the credit of which belonged to his father, Gu Wei Ting, who had forced him to train and exercise with the army since he was 5 years of age. If he did not work out daily, he would experience an uncomfortable and unsatisfying feeling somewhat akin to that of eating less than 2 meals a day. Gyu Hai performed 200 push-ups easily and followed that with an hour of high-speed treadmill run. He completed his intense exercise program with a boxing routine by brutally hitting the suspended punching sandbag. That left him thoroughly thrilled as he pictured it, variously as Gu Wei-ting, Jiang Yuan, and also the stepbrother that he had never met. By the time he finished working out, it was already past 8 p.m. Gu Hai stretched his hand towards his school bag and fished out a piece of essay paper. After admiring it for some time, he used a strip of scotch tape to stick it on top of the writing table. Next, he took out a piece of thin paper, placed it on top of the essay paper, and started to trace out the characters. He was extremely fond of this handwriting. It was different from the standardized regular script, but it was not the semi-cursive script either. Bai Luoyin personally created this style, and he was just like a relaxed person, freely extending his forelimbs without restraint, while still possessing a dynamic and unyielding strength. The next morning, Yuchi entered the classroom through the back door and casually tossed his school bag on top of his desk as usual. That seemingly nonchalant action caused the big bag of toilet paper to drop to the floor. A small piece of paper beneath the bag of tissue slipped out and drifted in the air before finally landing on Bai Luoyin's desk. His classmates around him saw that incident and secretly laughed behind his back. This Yuki must be quite something to bring so much toilet paper at one time. Yuki ignored the stares around him and picked up the toilet paper instead. When he could not fit it all inside his drawer, he put it down next to his chair. As he turned around, he noticed the small piece of paper on top of the table behind him. "This is for you," were the words written on the paper. Yuchi was stunned. "Bai Luoyin gave this to me." Why is he giving me toilet paper? He stared at his own drawer, speechless for a while. He finally understood. Bai Luoyin must have seen that his drawer was always filled with used tissues and realized that he did not have enough, so he must have bought them especially for him. Alright, this guy is normally very cold-hearted, but in reality, his heart is very warm. 20 minutes into the self-study period, Bai Luoyin entered the classroom. Under the watchful gaze of the whole class, he slowly walked towards the last desk, took his English textbook, and prepared to study outside the classroom. That was the school's regulation, whereby every student who came late must stand outside the classroom. A week since school started, Bai Luoyin had never attended the self-study period inside the classroom. Hey, Yukiya, called Bai Luoyin, a bag of toilet paper in his hand. Thanks. Bai Luoyin was surprised. That girl is really stupid. She actually bought it. Don't thank me. I'm not the one who bought it. Yuki grinned madly. What's there to be embarrassed about? It's not like you gave me a bag of tampons. Fuck you.